Welcome. We're back for another episode of TLG. This time, I want to go over this early season standings, see a few different storylines happening and what's going on around the league. I know it's a small sample size at the start, but it's starting to get a little trendy things going on here. There's been some major pitching injuries so far, and a couple hot starts, a couple cold starts, all the fun stuff. So the first thing, if you look at this page, that jumps out at you has to be Texas at 16-1. The Rangers coming off a dismal 2025 where they lost their superstar center fielder MVP candidate Zion Bannister. The guy is the modern day Ken Griffey Jr. with a plus power tool, plus contact, plus range, plus stealing, plus eye, plus avoid K, every single thing you want out of a player. His profile, if he puts it all together and stays healthy for a season, looks to be that of a top 5 player in baseball. He did get the fragile tag after last season's big injury. The injury history, if you look, is getting pretty full. A lot of them are minor injuries. The shoulder was the big one last year. He's never had another one over 3 weeks other than that. So hopefully he can play in 130 games a year at least the next few years of his prime. The guy is a freak. So with him healthy, they have Maximo Cost, the superstar shortstop. Guy has 70 range, and every season so far in the big leagues as a young pup, he's put up at least 3 or 4 WAR. So just looks turning into one of the game's superstar players. So with those two leading the charge, a couple sweet ass role players to fill in. I wouldn't say actually role player. I'd probably say a third star out of Robert Gonzalez here. He had 3.8 WAR last season. His power tools is 65. Looks a little bit better than last time you looked at him. Yeah, his power went up in the offseason. Just looks like a freak coming into his prime. So the big three there. Big offseason signing here of Kevin Ginkel. And he is a talented guy that can close off bullpen games for them there. Joe Barlow's in the bullpen too, another stud. They got some nice pitching there, young guys, Robbie Bradford, Carrillo, and then they got the old vet leader, Lance McCullers, put up a couple solid seasons in a row. The only weakness they would have is probably just not having a crazy bullpen other than those top guys. It's definitely solid though. I wouldn't say it's elite. I didn't expect them to be this hot. I thought the Houston Astros would win that division pretty handily. I thought Texas would be in the fight for second, but looking wrong early. That Texas team is coming out swinging. So that's really exciting. Another storyline we have here is the Cardinals over the Pirates in second place. Pirates have a loaded roster. Doesn't really matter. They're pretty much tied. But I did expect the Cardinals to be pretty improved. After listening to Drew's podcast, I kind of had forgot about how good they were getting. I knew those young guys were good, but I guess I just hadn't really in my mind put together the fact that they'll have all those guys together with Pete Alonso and Torkelson and kind of realize the high-end talent they have all coming into their own now. Torkelson and Alonso both have monster power tools. So do the young guys, Miranda and Poisson. And then they got the superstar defensive guys up the middle in Poisson and Pache. So that team, and Carrier, if you look at his profile, 70 power. The guy's hitting 270 early on here, holding it down in the major league level. It's going to always strike out a ton, but most modern day power sluggers do. The guy is an amazing fielder who'd be a starting center fielder on mostly pretty much any team in baseball other than 2 or 3 teams that have those 70 range center fielders. So Lorenzo Carrier is a center fielder playing right field with 65 power. So yeah, that guy is a freaky freak. And then the pitchers here, actually not playing too great earlier on, Louis Castillo and Baez, but so early. Pittsburgh, if you look at them, they started 10-5. At like usual, they have first place in pitcher WAR, second place in batting average offensively. Really solid all-around team, so they're going to be in contention all season. But that's going to be a battle to watch. I thought Pittsburgh, just like I thought Houston, would have the upper hand, being a lot more veteran, have a lot more veteran guys. But those young guys for both squads, St. Louis and Texas, are dominating early. The West, we all knew would be pretty close. 5 really solid ball clubs, no weak links, and San Francisco's coming out on top early, which I figured they'd probably be the best team in that division. They're all really good, but San Fran's infield is just so elite. One thing I want to kind of go over is I didn't really realize how good Hudson Potts was. I thought I remembered seeing him go up quite a bit in the offseason, but I forgot until just today. I was looking at him, and he had one of the best TCRs I've ever seen. In the whole TLG, he's been about 40, 45 power for about 4 years. and he jumped up 20 contact. Jumped up 20 contact to 60 in the offseason, 65 potential. So a plus 20 is one of the rarest things I've ever seen, and his power went up 15. And he's also a 60 defender. So what that's saying is he was already a 3-WAR player last season, has 115 OPS plus at second base, knocked 20 homers in, rotated between second and third base last year. And then their OSA is saying he went up 20 with his hit tool and 15 with his power tool. Essentially, he's getting 40% better with those two most important things offensively, meaning he probably is going to hit about 40 home runs from the second base spot with pretty solid, even maybe a tad above average second base defense. The ability to fill into third base there if Arenado gets injured. The guy is a legitimate MVP candidate now with that profile. If you look at his profile here, a good comparison would be my guy last year I traded away, Sandro Fabian. If you go to compare player, they are very similar. You got the 6.5 hit tool in Fabian, the 60 on Potts, and then you got the 60. You just see how good Fabian hit 39 home runs last year and had 6 WAR. So that just kind of gives you an idea. They both have about the same approach with the eye avoid being 50 and 45. So it just shows you how high Potts' power ceiling is. As if you think Fabian hit almost 40 home runs with 60 power, with 70 power, so about the same and everything else. And plus, you got Potts as quite a bit better defender. So it just shows Potts' ceiling is insane. He might actually, crazy enough, be better than Luke Leto. That duo, I think, is going to dominate the league for a long time, and it's probably the best 1-2 punch other than Acosta and Banniger in Texas there. It's just nasty for the young guys, I mean. The whole league is just so gross. I'd say Pache and Poisson for St. Louis is up there too, along with and there's some older duos that are really good, but a couple young combos there that are just going to be really big stars for the next few years. That team is really nice, especially when you got Heliot Ramos, who has almost the same profile, also has a 75 hit stick power tool and a 70 contact. You got 65 arms. So these guys are just stars in San Francisco, and they're all young, all controllable contracts. I think Potts came over in a trade with San Diego a long time ago. Let's see here. Way back in 2020, he must have made that trade. That one's looking rough for Mike Yastrodamus, or whatever you say his name, and shortstop prospect who didn't really turn out to be a major league player. So that's just crazy how far Potts has come to turn into that big of a star. Those are the coolest things about the game, is those big TCRs. So that's San Francisco. They got a really nasty rotation. Sandy Gaston also had some of the biggest improvement in the league, where he was a 40 control guy for a long time, and now he's 55. That's a plus 15. And you can see it too in his his walk rates. He used to be like a 15% walk guy, 50 innings, and then he had that big jump, and now he's like 78%, almost cut it in half. So he's only walking 1 of every 12 batters. That guy is a freak. Throw some gas. Another crazy improvement for San Francisco is, I just noticed the other day, is Faedo also has gone up a ton in his movement. He was a 30 movement guy and then 35 for a long time. It went up to 40, and then his age 30 season, it's up to 45. So the guy all of a sudden is an extreme fly ball guy, and in that stadium with 60 stuff, 65 control, he's looking like a freak. That guy has gotten so much better because home runs were a major problem for him in Washington. He let up 2 home runs per 9 3 years in a row. He still had such good stuff in control. He kind of had still net positive 160 inning seasons with 1 WARs, but now he looks like a totally different player that should be a 3 or 4 WAR player. And San Francisco just has a lot of weapons now. So that's an exciting team. The Central is going to be really tight. Minnesota is having some really bad injury problems here. And then you got the other 4 all within 3 games of each other. Looking pretty nice. Houston's off to a slow start. They are 6-9. Pena is just slowing. He's only hit 180 so far, so obviously that's going to turn around. Still on pace for 65 home runs, which is funny. So obviously he's going to get a lot better. A lot of their hitters hitting in the 100s that are really good hitters, so obviously just some bad luck and playing against some pretty good teams start the season. I think they had me for a couple games there. They lost both, and they had the Angels they lost, and early on they started with Oakland. So yeah, surprisingly they've lost a lot of games to Seattle, but like I said, that's just a short sample size. I expect them to still win over 90. And then you got the NL division, which is mine. Me and Washington are both coming out hot. Washington, as I think LA Frank pointed out, they have 40 home runs now, 34 last sim. First in the league by a mile. If you look, they're literally first in everything, except they strike out a lot. insane production. 6 WAR already, a team batting average of 300, and slugging a ton, 570. Defensively, they're middle of the pack in pitching, so that's going to be a team that is going to keep knocking balls out of the ballpark. I think they have a lot of power. If you sort their lineups by power potential, they got about 8 guys with plus power, and a couple guys, 3 guys above 65, Riley, Mendoza, and Soto. So that's some major power of that lineup. Also have some pretty good contact guys too. So a lot of really solid offensive players. That's going to be a big battle there in this division. 4 or 5 really good teams there. And then in the East, you have a really hot start by the Jays and the Yankees. Jays have dropped 5 in a row, and they're still 11-6. So yeah, they're 11-1, I guess, which is insane. And they had a tough sim last week, but those 3 teams are really coming out hot. The Expos have kind of had a little bit of a slow start, but I also started 5-14 last season, or so I think I started 6-14 last season to win the World Series. So you could always recover from a slow start. Boston is 12-4. Obviously, we've talked a ton about them. Drew on his podcast, a bunch of mega stars there. Got really unlucky with the 2 injuries. They had Nick Anderson, Diaz both go down. Diaz is going to be back in about July, August, which should be fine. Anderson, career might be over. He's 35 years old with a season-ending injury. Will be out till past spring training next season, and he'll be 36, almost 37. So he might actually retire. He has some big money left on that contract, but if he does come back next season, he hasn't dropped off at all. He's still got that 80 stuff. So those 2 injuries really kind of devastating, losing 2 80 stuff guys, but I think they're pretty much the only team in the league that can handle that with how good their pitching is. It just kind of opens the door for some other young guys there to be able to fill the roles. They have, sorry, I clicked on the wrong tab there. You got New York here at 10-5. New York had a big acquisition in the offseason, Dylan Cease, who's come out and got knocked up real hard all 3 starts. Last start looked a little better. Still let up 9 hits, but he did at least strike out 7, make it to the 5th inning. But yeah, it's not looking good early on for him. Playing with a pretty good Yankees team, though, he should recover. You got 5 really solid starters there, so I don't think pitching's going to be a problem, even if a couple of them have a little bit of down years. You got a couple big power hitters in the middle of the lineup here playing pretty well. Verdugo had a huge season last year, coming a little slow this year. Cleaver Torres is killing it so far. He already has 4 home runs, In his career, he's up to 324 home runs now. His 29 seasons, so that's pretty impressive. You got Landon Jordan get some minutes there at third base. Interesting team there. They have, I love this closer, man. This guy's such a beast. 4 innings pitched, 4 saves so far. 38% K percentage. Last year's 34. Guy's got an electric arm. And then Severino, a couple of big names there. So I think they're going to put up a fight with Boston. I think Toronto is going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. Got a couple massive off-season expenditures there. You got a really nice lineup here, 1-5. And then you got some defensive guys here, 6-9. So 1-5 is real nice, though. Carlson should recover from that slow start. Obviously, Vladdy and Bowers are always going to be killing it. Grisham looks like he had a big week this week with 3 home runs, 3 games in a row. Huge, expensive acquisition there at $18 million a season. So excited for all these guys. Can't wait to see. It looks like the AL is a little bit better now in the East and the West, at least. That Central's still looking the same as years past. I think they're slowly getting. There's a lot of high draft picks every season going in those teams, though, so should recover eventually. I really like Minnesota's class. They have some beasts coming up here. I love that trade they made with the Mets last year and got the 75 power tool bat, looking like they are going to be able to acquire a few more big pieces with some of the older guys in their primes now. If they do trade them off, they got some really good players that are on the trade block now, like Royce Lewis. And Arraez still has that 80 hit tool. A couple of really advanced bats here. I think Lede has also got 60 power. Good plus approach, good defender. So yeah, they should be able to really put together quite the farm system there if they end up going all in on that rebuild. But who knows their plans. Love the early season from a few teams there. I think we'll end the episode here. Just kind of want to give a quick recap of what's gone on the first few weeks, but not overreact to some of the stuff as we played about not even 10% of the season. Really looking forward to the next few months. I think a couple teams here I'd hope to see start doing a little better. The Reds had a little bit of a slow start. I was expecting the big season out of them. Obviously, they're not going to go the whole season with all these like 8-9 ERAs. They should recover pretty nicely too. Really liking their lineup now after a couple nice drafts. And I think next episode we'll maybe highlight some star players. That'll be kind of fun. But recap episode is over for now. Thanks, guys.